picture the absolute, just deafening roar of a professional hockey arena.
Oh, yeah, it's intense.
Right. You have 20,000 fans screaming, the goal horn is blaring, the lights are flashing, the energy is just, it's absolutely electric.
It really is.
But now I want you to zoom out from the ice and look up into the VIP owner's box. There is a woman standing there, smiling perfectly for the cameras, just waving at the crowd.
Painting a perfect picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you look closely, like if you strip away all that glamour and the noise, you'll see her husband standing right beside her. And his fingers are dug so deeply into her wrist that he is leaving a dark, painful bruise right under the cuff of her designer sweater.
It's chilling.
It really is the ultimate terrifying juxtaposition. You know, a public space defined by this visible, celebrated physical combat, but it's masking a private, invisible war of domestic terror.
Yeah, and it completely shatters the illusion we usually bring to the world of sports.
How so?
Well, I mean, we want the struggle to be confined to a 60-minute game clock. We want the rules painted clearly on the ice in red and blue lines, you know.
Right, with a definitive winner when the final buzzer sounds.
Exactly. But when the primary threat isn't an opposing defenseman checking you against the boards, but rather the person sharing your home, the person managing your bank accounts, and basically controlling your reality.
The entire concept of winning just fundamentally changes.
It really does. It ceases to be about capturing a championship trophy at all. It becomes this agonizing minute-by-minute campaign for pure psychological and physical survival.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a profoundly intense, custom-tailored mission for you today.
We really do.
We are examining an incredibly layered piece of source material.
Yeah.
It's Kandi Steiner's novel, Right Your Wrongs, and it's the 6th book in her Kings of the Ice series.
Now, if you just look at the cover, you might expect a standard hockey romance.
Oh, for sure. But we are going far beyond the locker room today. We're exploring the anatomy of a second-chance romance, but more importantly, we are unpacking how severe trauma, the actual mechanics of coercive control, and this life-saving concept of found family all intersect, both on and off the ice.
And to do that properly, we really must establish the framework of care right from the opening pages.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because Steiner doesn't trick her readers into this heavy material. If we examine the author's note and the dedication, she immediately sets an unyielding boundary.
I have the quote right here, actually.
Oh, go ahead and read it.
She dedicates this book to the ones who clawed their way out of the dark, who learned to breathe again after the world tried to steal the air from their lungs, and who dared to open their hearts when it was been easier to keep the door closed.
It's so powerful.
It is. And she explicitly warns readers that they are walking into a narrative dealing with domestic violence, emotional abuse, and the suffocating reality of coercive control.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because setting that kind of boundary up front completely reframes your expectations as a reader.
Yeah, it totally does. In a lot of sports narratives, the biggest hurdle is, like, recovering from a pulled hamstring or, I don't know, navigating a tense press conference.
Right, exactly. But Steiner is signaling that the psychological stakes here are literal life and death. She is promising us a narrative that doesn't just use trauma cheaply to manufacture a little bit of third-act tension.
And that distinction is crucial. The abuse in this narrative isn't just a plot device.
No, not at all.
It is the central architectural hurdle of these characters' entire lives. Steiner treats the mechanics of domestic violence with a really clinical, respectful accuracy.
We are going to see exactly how a person gets methodically trapped, isolated, and dismantled, and then we are going to see the agonizing collective effort required to rebuild them.
So let's look at how that architecture of trauma is initially built. We really have to rewind to January 2006.
Right, back to Boston College.
Yeah, inside a classroom at BC. The course is called Human Behavior in the Social Environment.
Which is such a fitting setting.
It really is. It sounds like a typical college meet cute, but the context is incredibly heavy. We are dropping 2 people into a room designed to study how environments shape humans.
And both of these individuals have been profoundly warped by their own broken environment.
Exactly. So we should look at who is actually sitting in that room. Let's start with Shane McCabe.
Okay, so Shane is 21 years old. He's a junior and the star winger for the BC Eagles.
And he's already been drafted by the Jacksonville Barracudas.
Yeah, I mean, this guy operates like a machine running on pure, unadulterated ambition. He has meticulously mapped out his entire NHL career since he was 10 years old.
Right, and he isn't taking this human behavior class just to fulfill some random elective requirement.
No, he is taking it specifically to study psychology so he can become a more effective team captain. He wants to learn how to manipulate locker room dynamics to his advantage.
It's intense. Every single breath he takes is calculated for hockey supremacy.
But we have to ask why he is so obsessed with that calculation.
Yeah, where does that come from?
Well, Shane represents a trauma response that is just heavily reliant on structure. When he was just 7 years old, he lost both of his parents in a catastrophic accident.
Oh, wow. At 7?
Yeah, and he was suddenly thrust into the care of his grandparents, who were older, exhausted, and frankly, pretty ill-equipped and unwilling to raise a grieving child.
So what did they do?
Their solution was to throw him onto the ice just to keep him occupied. They essentially handed him off to the minor hockey league system.
Wow.
But in doing so, they inadvertently provided him with a lifeline. The rigid schedules, the hierarchy of the locker room, the demanding coaches, that manufactured structure basically became his surrogate family.
So the system kept him from completely shattering.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the girl sitting 2 rows ahead of him, Ariana Ridley. The source material uses very specific physical details to signal the invisible weight she's carrying. She is described as striking, with a snow-white complexion and golden hair pulled into a thick braid.
But Shane doesn't focus on the glamour.
No, he doesn't. With his hyper-observant psychological eye, he notices the bitten nails. He notices a jagged, visible scar right in the middle of her hand.
And most importantly, he recognizes that she has eyes haunted the way only a survivor's can be.
Yeah. She is making a concerted effort to shrink into her seat and avoid notice, which paradoxically makes her the most magnetic thing in the room to someone like Shane.
And this physical positioning leads directly to the thematic core of our whole deep dive today.
Right, the classroom debate.
Exactly. The professor poses a debate to the class. Is resilience an individual trait, or is it built through community?
And Ariana raises that scarred hand. And with this raspy voice of someone who has lived a much harder life than your typical college sophomore, she argues that resilience is strictly, unconditionally an individual trait.
She tells the class that support systems are a nice luxury, but they are not what saves you.
Her exact quote is, "You get you through."
Let's analyze the mechanics of that worldview for a second, because Ariana grew up in a house terrorized by a physically abusive stepfather named Jay.
Right.
Her mother, for various complex reasons, stayed in that environment. So Ariana learned during her formative developmental years that the adults who were supposed to constitute her community were either actively inflicting the violence or they were entirely incapable of stopping it.
So to Ariana, relying on someone else isn't just like a philosophical disappointment, it is a mathematical guarantee of danger.
Yes, you get you through is the only algorithm that has successfully kept her alive.
But Shane immediately objects. The star athlete raises his hand and essentially says, "I completely disagree."
Which is so bold.
It is. He argues that survival often depends entirely on accepting the hand that reaches down into the dark for you. He talks about the difference between drowning alone and being pulled to the surface by the steady voice of a coach or the physical support of a teammate.
To Shane, resilience is defined by who is willing to carry the weight with you.
It is just a stunning collision of opposing survival strategies.
It really is.
I was thinking about how to visualize this, and it's like looking at the architectural blueprints for 2 completely different types of buildings.
Yeah.
But they're both situated in an earthquake zone.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. So Shane's psychological architecture relies on a vast, interconnected scaffold. The coaches, the teammates, the team management. If the earth shakes, the load is distributed across dozens of support beams.
Yeah.
But Ariana's psychological architecture is a single, massive pillar of reinforced concrete. She bears the entire weight of her existence alone.
Wow.
If Shane's scaffold loses a few beams, he might sway, but he stays up. But if Ariana's single pillar ever cracks, her entire building comes crashing down.
They are both incredibly strong, but their structural engineering is fundamentally incompatible.
Exactly. It's like a turtle meeting a porcupine and trying to figure out how to hug.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. And the tragedy of their early relationship is that, philosophically, they are both partially right.
Right.
Genuine resilience really does require that internal, reinforced, concrete pillar of personal will, but it also has to be sustained by the surrounding scaffolding of a community.
But at 21 years old, their respective traumas are just too raw.
Yeah, their armors are way too rigid. They fall deeply in love, but they lack the emotional maturity to blend those two architectural styles. They are constantly pulling in opposite directions just to feel safe.
And that precarious foundation brings us to the ultimate stress test. It's 2008. They've been together for 2 years.
And the theoretical safety of that college classroom debate is just obliterated by a brutal real-world collision.
Shane is on the absolute precipice of his NHL dreams. He's about to sign a major contract and launch into superstardom.
Ariana, however, is entrenched in the most desperate fight of her life.
Yeah. She is in the middle of a vicious family court battle against her abusive stepfather, Jay. She's trying to legally secure the safety of her younger brother, Georgie, and her mother.
We need to look closely at the mechanics of family court in these types of abuse cases because it perfectly explains the trap Ariana is in.
Please, break that down for us.
Well, in the eyes of a judge determining custody or protective orders, the ultimate currency is stability. Ariana has to present a life that is immaculately boring, predictable, and geographically anchored.
Right, no surprises.
Exactly. Any hint of chaos, transient living, or erratic behavior will just be weaponized by her stepfather's legal team to prove she is an unfit guardian for her brother.
And that is exactly what Ariana's lawyers tell Shane when they pull him aside for a private meeting. They lay out the brutal reality of an NHL lifestyle.
Which is not stable at all.
No. Being a rising star means living out of suitcases, constant airport runs, the ever-present threat of being traded to a different city overnight.
Yeah.
You've got paparazzi following them to restaurants, and just the chaotic orbit of sports media in general.
The lawyers tell Shane point blank, if Ariana is legally tethered to his circus, her stepfather will use that lifestyle to paint her as unstable, and she will lose her brother to an abuser.
It places Shane in an agonizing, seemingly impossible crucible. Does he stay with the woman he loves, selfishly holding on to her, knowing it might cost her the sibling she is sacrificing everything to protect?
Or does he sever the relationship, devastating them both emotionally, but providing her with the clean, unimpeachable legal slate she needs to win her case?
And Shane chooses the latter. He packs his bags.
Yeah, it's so rough.
There is a gut-wrenching scene where Ariana is standing in the rain, begging him not to walk away. She is pleading with him, trying to negotiate, saying they can figure out long distance, they can find a compromise.
But Shane is resolute. He delivers a line that sounds like it belongs in a Greek tragedy. He says, "I love you enough to leave. Please love me enough to let me go."
Oh, man. So let me push back on the narrative of the noble hero here. Was Shane actually making a heroic sacrifice, or was this a fundamental betrayal of their partnership?
It is a phenomenal question. And to Kandi Steiner's credit, the source material forces the reader to sit with the extreme discomfort of his decision.
Yeah, it doesn't let him off the hook easily.
Not at all. From the vantage point of a 23-year-old athlete who has been taught to take decisive action, Shane genuinely believes he is falling on his sword. He thinks he is the hero, taking the painful hit to secure her victory.
But if we peel back the layers,
If we examine the psychology of his actions, there is a profound strain of cowardice and, frankly, arrogance masquerading as nobility.
because he made the decision in secret? Right. He listened to the lawyers instead of his partner.
Precisely. By making a unilateral choice about what was best for Ariana's future, he entirely stripped her of her agency.
Right.
Think back to her trauma. Ariana's entire life has been defined by a man, her stepfather, controlling her environment, making decisions for her, and rendering her powerless.
And what does Shane do in his attempt to save her? He replicates the exact dynamic of her trauma.
Exactly. He decides that the burden is his to manage, completely ignoring her classroom philosophy of you get you through. He didn't trust her intelligence or her strength to navigate the complexities of an NHL relationship alongside her legal battle.
He infantilized her.
He really did. He looked at the woman who had survived a monster, and he decided she was too fragile to make her own choices.
That is such a crucial structural flaw in his thinking. He replicated the trauma while trying to shield her from it. And, I mean, let's be honest about what he retreated to.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
When the emotional complexity of Ariana's life became too terrifying to navigate, Shane fell backward into the only environment where he felt absolute control, the ice.
Yep.
He chose the predictable, rigid structure of hockey over the messy, unpredictable work of being a partner in a crisis.
Which is exactly why their eventual reunion, 5 years later in 2013, is so layered with bitterness and resentment.
Right, it's 2013, they are in Boston. But Shane hasn't returned as the conquering hero with the Stanley Cup ring.
No, he is literally broken.
He is on crutches, having suffered a catastrophic career-ending injury. The sources specify a shattered hip and a completely torn ACL.
And for the listener who might not be familiar with the mechanics of hockey injuries, this isn't just a bad sprain.
Definitely not.
A torn anterior cruciate ligament means the connective tissue holding his knee together has snapped. Combine that with a shattered hip, which is the core pivot point for every skating stride, every sudden stop, every burst of speed. His body is fundamentally ruined for professional sports.
He says his entire dream evaporated in one bad second.
Yeah.
He's in Boston, seeing a reconstructive specialist, and he spots Ariana at a restaurant. He approaches her, practically begging for forgiveness, admitting he was young, stupid, and made a terrible mistake.
And Ariana's response is a masterclass in self-preservation.
Oh, totally.
She looks at this broken man and she rejects him with absolute freezing finality. And her reasoning is flawless.
She doesn't buy his sudden epiphany at all.
Not for a second. She tells him, "You were choosing hockey over me. You still would be if you had the chance."
That is just a devastating assessment, because we all know it's true.
It forces Shane to look in the mirror and confront a very ugly reality. He has to ask himself, did I really leave in 2008 purely to protect her legal case? Or did I leave because the all-consuming mistress of professional hockey was an easier, less complicated path?
Wow. Yeah.
Ariana sees right through his apology. She recognizes that Shane didn't seek her out because he had done the hard emotional work to evolve. He sought her out because his primary coping mechanism, his architectural scaffold of hockey, had forcibly rejected him.
His body failed, the sport discarded him, and in his desperate free fall, he was just grasping for the only other thing that ever made him feel secure.
Exactly.
If you are listening to this, I really want you to put yourself in that psychological headspace. Just imagine the one thing that defines your entire identity, the goal you have poured every ounce of your blood and sweat into since childhood, just being deleted from your life in a fraction of a second.
The sheer blinding panic of that loss.
It totally warps your decision-making. You'll reach for anything familiar to stop the bleeding. Shane was reaching for Ariana, treating her like a secondary safety net.
That Ariana had spent the last 5 years pouring her own concrete, building her own stable life, and she flatly refuses to be his consolation prize.
She forces him to learn how to exist without hockey and without her.
And this unresolved rejection is the emotional bridge that carries us into the present day. We jump forward a massive amount of time.
We are decades removed from that college classroom debate. Shane and Ariana are now fully formed adults in their early 40s.
The raw, bleeding wounds of their youth have scarred over, but as we're about to see, untreated trauma doesn't disappear just because you put on an expensive suit and step into an executive role.
No, it merely mutates. Let's set the stage for this present-day collision course.
Okay, lay it out.
Shane is now 41 years old. He's taken all of that obsessive, hypervigilant hockey energy and successfully channeled it into coaching. He is the head coach of the Tampa Bay Ospreys, and he is highly respected in the league.
But his architectural scaffold is currently rattling.
Yeah, it is. His star goalie, a veteran player affectionately known as Will Daddy P. Perry, is struggling with a severely degenerating hip. Will is contemplating retirement to preserve his quality of life for his family.
And the psychological mirroring here is brilliant by the author. Shane is forced to watch a man he deeply cares about stand on the exact same physical precipice that ended his own playing career.
Shane's own anxieties about bodily failure and loss of identity are being relentlessly triggered every time he watches his goalie wins on the ice.
It's got to be so hard to watch.
And just to add gasoline to the fire, the beloved old general manager of the Ospreys, this jolly, supportive guy named Dick, who was instrumental in helping Shane rebuild the team's culture, unexpectedly dies of a massive heart attack right as the season is ramping up.
Oh, that's awful timing.
The locker room is in mourning, the starting goalie is wavering, and the corporate ownership group scrambles to bring in a replacement GM to stabilize the franchise.
Enter Nathan Black.
Here is where the deep dive turns into a full-on psychological thriller. Shane is dreading meeting this new boss. He walks into the media room for the introductory press conference, adjusting his tie, ready to play the standard political games.
Right.
He sees Nathan Black, who is described as smooth, impeccably polished, and aggressively corporate. He looks like a predatory Wall Street hedge fund manager who just wandered into a hockey rink.
Yeah, totally out of place, but acting like he owns it.
Nathan shakes Shane's hand, turns around, and says, "Let me introduce you to my wife."
And standing right there is Ariana.
The psychological tension of this moment in the source material is suffocating. Imagine being Shane. You are locking eyes with the only woman you have ever truly loved, the woman whose heart you broke, the woman who rightly rejected you a decade ago.
And she is legally bound to the man who now holds your entire career in his hands.
If Nathan discovers they have any history, let alone a passionate romantic history, he will fire Shane out of pure ego.
But the threat of unemployment isn't what actually terrifies Shane in this room.
No, not at all. What paralyzes him is the behavior he observes from Ariana.
Because the woman standing next to Nathan is completely unrecognizable to him.
Exactly. Let's break down the Ditz Act,
Yeah,
because this is the most chilling element of the entire setup.
let's talk about that.
Shane remembers the Ariana from college. He remembers a brilliant, fierce, intellectually combative woman who would go toe-to-toe with professors on complex sociological theory. But the woman introducing herself to him at this press conference is projecting a completely different persona.
Right. Shane notes the incredibly jarring, self-deprecating language she uses. Maintaining the charade that they are strangers, Ariana shakes his hand and immediately starts apologizing for herself.
She calls herself a ditz.
She tells a meandering story about how she constantly misplaces her car keys, or how she accidentally had a shipment of charity event trophies delivered to their residential address instead of the arena loading dock.
She is actively making herself appear small, foolish, and easily confused.
Yes.
Why is she doing that? Like, what is the evolutionary benefit of playing the fool?
Well, if you've ever worked under a severely micromanaging, toxic boss who subtly undermines your competence until you find yourself second-guessing a basic email, you will understand the preliminary mechanics of what we are looking at here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Nathan takes it to the extreme of domestic coercive control. Ariana managed to escape the overt physical brutality of her stepfather, Jay, only to be ensnared in the sophisticated velvet trap of Nathan Black.
Nathan's abuse isn't characterized by thrown punches that leave obvious public scars. His abuse is systemic, bureaucratic, and insidious.
The sources outline his tactics with terrifying clarity. It starts with total financial and professional isolation.
Yeah. Coercive control is the methodical dismantling of a person's autonomy. Nathan manages every single bank account. Ariana does not have access to a dime of her own money.
And even her passion project, her nonprofit charity work, was structured by Nathan to fall entirely under his corporate umbrella.
He controlled her professional references, her funding, and her schedule. She is completely tethered to him for basic survival.
And then there is the psychological warfare, the constant gaslighting.
How does he do that?
He utilizes these soft tissue paper digs that are designed to inflict 1,000 tiny cuts to her sanity. He will say things in a completely calm, seemingly concerned voice. Like, "You're always so tired lately, darling. Maybe your charity work is just too much responsibility for you."
Ugh, so manipulative.
Or, "You looked incredibly flustered speaking to the board today, and optics matter." He is constantly rewriting her reality, making her doubt her own energy levels, her competence, and her perception of events.
He trains her to constantly monitor her own behavior, to avoid triggering his subtle, punishing displeasure.
Yes. And let's be clear, there is a physical threat, but it is weaponized for an audience of one.
Right. Shane observes Nathan smiling broadly for the media cameras, playing the perfect executive husband, while his hand is clamped around Ariana's wrist so tightly that Shane knows it will leave a bruise.
The public charm is a mask for private cruelty.
This perfectly explains the Ditz Act.
It really does. In the ecosystem of coercive control, survival requires adaptation. Ariana has learned through brutal trial and error that displaying competence, intelligence, or independence actively threatens Nathan's fragile ego, which triggers his abuse.
Therefore, she has weaponized incompetence.
Yes. By playing the fool, by making herself an object of mild pity or gentle annoyance, she pacifies the predator. She shrinks herself to avoid his wrath.
It is a devastating, tragic adaptation of her 2006 philosophy. You get you through. She is surviving the only way she knows how, by playing dead.
And Shane McCabe, the man who wants to fix everything with structure, has to stand completely still and watch the woman he loves systematically erase herself.
But the horror of Nathan Black doesn't stop at the front door of their mansion. Because a man with a toxic, unquenchable need for control cannot contain it to just his marriage. It inevitably spills out onto the ice.
Which transitions us into what the outline calls the game behind the game. This is where the narrative shifts gears into a high-stakes sports thriller.
Yeah, the systemic abuse Nathan inflicts on Ariana perfectly mirrors the systemic corruption he introduces to the Tampa Bay Ospreys.
I want to make sure we explain the mechanics of this sabotage clearly because Shane starts noticing anomalies that violate the fundamental laws of professional hockey.
He is a hyper-observant coach, and he realizes the ice is being tilted, and it isn't the opposing team doing it. Let's look at the backup goalie, Ben Sandin.
Okay.
With Will Perry struggling with his hip, Sandin is getting significant ice time. And Shane starts watching the tape of Sandin missing incredibly routine blocks.
We need to define what makes a block routine at this level of play.
Right. At the NHL level, certain saves are pure muscle memory. If a puck is shot from a low-danger area with no traffic in front of the net, a professional goalie tracks it and stops it without thinking.
But Shane slows down the game tape. He watches Sandin track the puck perfectly. His eyes are locked on. He gets his body into the precise butterfly position. At the very last microsecond, he inexplicably shifts his skate, allowing the puck to slide right past him into the net. It doesn't look like a physical error. It looks like an intentional failure.
Wow. And then there's the situation with the rookie, Ivan Baranov.
This is a classic front office manipulation tactic. Nathan handpicked this kid from a lower league.
To get Baranov on the roster, Nathan bypassed the coach and unilaterally waived a veteran player.
And for those who don't follow the business of hockey, waiving a veteran means taking a reliable, experienced player who is beloved in the locker room and essentially putting him on the clearance rack.
Right, exposing him to being claimed by any other team in the league. You do this to clear roster space and salary cap room. It completely guts the morale of the team. But Nathan does it anyway to force his hand-picked rookie onto the ice.
And initially, Baranov plays exceptionally well, validating Nathan's controversial move.
He plays like an absolute star for the first two periods. But then, in highly specific, crucial moments, like a high-stakes penalty kill against the Toronto Maple Leafs, Baranov's brain seemed to turn off.
Yeah, he will be carrying the puck right inside his own blue line. Now, the blue line is the boundary of the defensive zone. If you are going to lose the puck, you do not lose it there.
Because it leads to an immediate, devastating fast break for the opposing team with zero defense in front of your goalie.
Exactly. But Baranov suspiciously coughs up the puck right at that critical boundary, leading to a massive loss. It is erratic, statistically improbable behavior.
Shane also starts observing cultural rot within the locker room infrastructure. He notices young players, guys on entry-level rookie contracts, suddenly walking into the arena wearing $50,000 Rolex watches that they absolutely cannot afford legally.
He walks into the locker room, and Sutter hushed meetings immediately fall silent.
The most insidious element, however, is the corruption of the medical staff. In professional sports, the medical team is supposed to be the objective firewall protector of the players' bodies.
But Shane suspects Nathan is pressuring the doctors. Players with minor concussions are being aggressively cleared for play prematurely.
Conversely, a veteran like Will Perry, who is trying to manage his hip pain and feels he can play through a crucial playoff push, is suddenly being held back and benched by the medical staff against his will.
But we have to ask the fundamental question of motive here. Why would a general manager, whose own job security theoretically relies on winning games, actively sabotage his own roster?
Because Nathan Black doesn't care about the romance of the sport. He doesn't care about his Stanley Cup legacy or the pride of the city of Tampa Bay.
No, he is a creature of the alternative finance world.
To him, this professional sports franchise is not a team. It is a distressed asset class. He is utilizing illegal gambling rings, executing point-shaving schemes, which is manipulating the final score of a game to ensure it falls within a specific betting spread.
And he is leveraging player contracts for his own illicit financial gain.
He views the hockey team through the exact same sociopathic lens that he views his wife, as an object to be meticulously controlled, manipulated, and extracted for value.
So let's look at the agonizing position this puts our protagonist in. How does Shane McCabe, a head coach whose entire professional philosophy is built on the integrity and structure of the game, combat a systemic rot when the call is coming from inside the house?
He is totally trapped. He is standing in the middle of his arena, watching the two entities he loves most in the world. Ariana and his team being systematically dismantled and abused by the exact same man.
And his boss is the villain.
Shane knows that if he loses his temper, if he storms into the owner's box and punches Nathan in the face, or if he goes to the sports media with accusations but no hard proof, Nathan will crush him.
He will fire him, blacklist him from the league, and worse, He will go home and take his bruised ego out on Ariana behind closed doors.
The psychological toll of this forced stoicism is immense. Shane is thrust into a permanent state of hypervigilance. He has to shake Nathan's hand, smile for the cameras, and pretend to agree with catastrophic roster moves, all while quietly gathering intelligence.
He is essentially reliving the utter helplessness of his childhood, when he was a 7-year-old boy who had zero control over the adults dictating his life.
But this time, his reinforced architectural scaffold gives him the capacity to fight back.
Yes.
But he cannot fight back alone. And this brings us to what is, without a doubt, the most emotionally satisfying part of this deep dive: the circle of trust.
Because to dismantle a man who controls the front office, you have to bypass the front office entirely. You have to go to the secondary cast, you have to go to the wives' club.
In the hyper-masculine, ego-driven world of professional sports, the true flow of intelligence often bypasses the locker room and travels through the whisper networks behind the scenes.
Steiner introduces a formidable group of women: Maven, Grace, Mia, Chloe, and Livia. These are the wives and fiancées of the core veteran players.
And they're not just passive arm candy sitting in the VIP box. They are an active intelligence network and a fiercely protective support system.
They are the ones who finally managed to crack through Ariana's reinforced concrete pillar. There is a beautifully mundane, poignant scene where Ariana is invited over to a house to bake cookies with this chaotic group of women.
For the first time in years, she is in an environment devoid of Nathan's surveillance. She is surrounded by genuine warmth, loud banter, flour on the counters, and unquestioning acceptance.
And in that safe environment, the dam finally breaks. Ariana confesses. She tells them about her college history with Shane. She admits they were deeply in love 20 years ago, and she explains the terrifying reality of her current marriage.
And these women do not judge her. They do not gossip. They immediately close ranks. They declare a circle of trust, promising her that her secrets are locked down.
But within this baking scene, there is a fascinating conversation that I want to highlight, because Kandi Steiner pulls off a brilliant piece of meta-commentary.
Oh, about the romance novels.
Yes. The women are gently teasing Ariana because they notice she reads a lot of romance novels. Ariana mounts a passionate psychological defense of the genre.
The quote from the source material is deeply illuminating. Ariana says, "No happy endings are guaranteed in real life, but with romance books, you know it'll all turn out okay. And it fills you with hope that maybe things will be okay for you in the end, too."
That is such a profound insight into how trauma survivors self-medicate. Ariana is living inside a waking psychological thriller. Her actual daily reality consists of monitoring her abuser's micro-expressions, walking on eggshells, and bracing for punishment.
So she uses the highly predictable, rigid tropes of romance novels as a psychological life raft. She knows the formula. There will be a misunderstanding, there will be a climax, but there's a 100% guarantee of a happily ever after.
She is consuming media where women are chosen, protected, and ultimately safe because she is starving for all three of those things in reality.
Steiner is winking at the reader here, validating the very book we are reading and explaining why people rely on these stories. They're not just frivolous entertainment, they are survival tools.
And it is shortly after this realization of unconditional support that we reach the critical turning point between Shane and Ariana.
The tension finally snaps. Shane pulls Ariana aside, and he lays every single card on the table. He knows how dangerous Nathan is. He knows that confronting a corrupt GM could result in him never coaching another game of professional hockey again.
But he looks at Ariana, and his architectural priorities are finally clear. He tells her, "I will burn it all down. I will die for your happiness and safety if that's what it takes."
This is the moment Shane rectifies his original sin. Think back to 2008. Presented with the threat of legal chaos, he chose the clean, predictable path of hockey. He chose his ambition over her safety.
Now, decades later, presented with the exact same binary choice, protect his hockey career or protect Ariana from a monster, he chooses her, without a fraction of hesitation. He finally proves that she is more important than the ice.
Which launches us into the climax, the takedown. Because as much as we might want him to, Shane isn't just going to punch Nathan in the parking lot.
A physical altercation might be emotionally cathartic, but it wouldn't solve the systemic rot. It wouldn't sever Ariana's legal ties, and it wouldn't clean up the roster.
Exactly. You cannot punch a spreadsheet. You cannot punch coercive control. They need a methodical strategy. They need a coordinated sting operation.
And this is where Shane's 2006 college thesis, that resilience is built through community, finally becomes a reality for Ariana. She doesn't have to fight this monster alone in the dark like she fought her stepfather. She has a team.
Let's look at how they execute this. Shane activates his network. He pulls in the trusted veteran core of the team. Will Perry, Jackson Britton, Vince Tanev. He bypasses the corrupted elements of the locker room entirely.
And crucially, the Wives Club is activated. The players track the medical coercion and the on-ice anomalies. The wives track the off-ice meetings, utilizing their social access to monitor who Nathan is speaking with in the VIP lounges.
It is a beautifully orchestrated heist of information. Together, this found family secretly compiles an airtight, irrefutable ledger of evidence against Nathan.
They document the illegal gambling ties, they map out the point-shaving algorithms he was forcing on the rookie, and they collect sworn testimonies regarding the medical staff's malpractice.
They build a legal weapon that cannot be swept under the rug.
And they spring the trap in the most public, humiliating forum possible, an executive dinner with the team owners and high-ranking league officials.
It is a masterpiece of coordinated dismantling. Nathan, a man whose entire identity is built on the arrogant belief that he controls every variable in the room, is systematically exposed.
He is suspended immediately, stripped of his power, and handed over to face severe federal criminal charges for his financial crimes. The empire of manipulation he spent years building crumbles in a single evening.
It is incredibly satisfying. But the narrative doesn't just stop at the villain's downfall. And this is vital, because removing the source of the abuse does not instantly rewire the victim's brain.
The emotional aftermath is handled with such incredible, realistic sensitivity.
So how do they actually rebuild?
Shane does something remarkable in the aftermath. The easy romantic trope would be for him to immediately sweep her off her feet and claim her. But Shane understands the psychological wreckage left behind by coercive control.
He sits her down and tells her, "Someone rewired the rules inside you without your consent."
He doesn't pressure her for a relationship. He actively encourages her to take her time, to find a specialized trauma therapist, and to heal her own mind at her own pace.
In doing so, he gives her back the ultimate gift, the agency he stole from her in 2008 and the autonomy Nathan crushed for the last several years.
He literally tells her, "The pen is back in your hands." It is a beautiful acknowledgement of her strength.
And of course, because Ariana loves a romance novel happy ending, we do get a spectacular epilogue. We jump forward 1 year later.
They do not have a stuffy, highly curated, high-stress country club wedding, which is exactly the kind of performative event Nathan would have forced her into.
Instead, they go to a ridiculous, neon-lit Vegas chapel with an Elvis impersonator serving as the officiant. And the whole chaotic affair is arranged by Grace, fully utilizing that found family energy.
And the specific detail regarding the wedding ring serves as the perfect thematic conclusion to the deep dive.
I love this detail so much. Shane does not propose with a massive, ostentatious diamond that he picked out himself to demonstrate his wealth and ownership.
He proposes with a flimsy little straw wrapper twisted into a circle.
He hands it to her and says that she needs to pick her own ring. He looks at her and says, "Your life and all the big decisions that come with it are yours to mold."
It is the ultimate anti-coercive control gesture. It is a vow of equal partnership.
It solidifies that her architectural pillar is fully repaired,
Yeah.
and he is simply proud to stand beside it.
It is a masterful ending.
And before we wrap up, we have to take a quick second to highlight the architect of this incredible emotional roller coaster, Kandi Steiner.
Looking at her bio in the sources, she is a University of Central Florida grad who has been obsessively writing since she was 10 years old.
Apparently in the 6th grade, she wrote and edited her own classroom newspaper until the principal forcibly shut it down, which tells you everything you need to know about her drive.
She's famous in the literary community for crafting these intense, angsty, deeply emotional journeys. She clearly knows how to blend rigorous psychological insight with highly compelling romance.
Oh, and she is an avid pole dancer, which is just a fantastic athletic fun fact.
She deeply understands the fundamental truth of the romance genre. The most blindingly beautiful light is only earned after forcing the characters to wade through absolute, terrifying darkness.
Which brings us to our final synthesis. We have spent an hour dissecting childhood trauma, the insidious mechanics of abusive power dynamics, front office hockey sabotage, and a 2-decade-long love story.
But if we distill all of these complex elements down into a single drop, what is the core functional takeaway of Right Your Wrongs?
The core takeaway circles all the way back to that snowy college classroom debate in 2006. True resilience isn't defined by how much punishment you can absorb alone in the dark.
Ariana spent her entire life believing that her isolation was her greatest armor. But it was only when she allowed herself to be vulnerable, to trust a group of loud women baking cookies, to lean on Shane's structural scaffold, that she found the actual power required to break her chains.
Resilience is having the immense courage to reach your hand out and let someone else help carry the weight.
So I want to address you, the listener, directly.
Whether you are navigating a suffocatingly toxic corporate environment, trying to rebuild after a deeply personal trauma, or simply trying to survive an exhausting, overwhelming week, who is sitting on your bench? Who makes up your circle of trust?
Ariana spent years mistaking her isolation for strength, only to realize it was actually just a cage with a different lock.
Look at your own life right now. Are you refusing help because you think it makes you stronger? And what incredible things might happen if you finally let yourself drop the armor and be part of a team?
It is a terrifying vulnerability to pass the puck to someone else when the game is on the line and the clock is running out.
But as this narrative so powerfully demonstrates, sometimes relying on your teammates is the only possible way to win the game.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Right Your Wrongs.
The ice might get cracked, murky, and incredibly dangerous sometimes, but remember, you never have to skate it alone. We will see you next time.